Hi, friends. I'm starting a new playlist. This is the first video in a list that I'm calling It's a Musical Life. And the reason and the intention for this playlist is to hope, my intention is to hope to bring a little bit more balance into the left versus right brain type of approach to music making and life in general. Personally, I felt I've learned a lot of great musical lessons from life experiences, and I've also gained a lot of great life experiences through musical expression. And thinking about that, it brings me to this idea of offering something maybe a little bit different than is currently out there. Although maybe somebody's doing something similar, I'm sure there's somebody doing something, but we've got plenty of things that address the left brain, the logical mind, as it applies to improvised music and all the approaches to the guitar in particular, which is a lot of what my channel focuses on. But I'm not even going to play today. I have my guitar here, but really this is more about looking at some ideas on how to balance left and right brain and bring that to your musical experiences. So I hope to create a series of these things. If you think they're useful, please let me know in the comments. Today is just going to be a short one, focusing on some do's and don'ts about our musical practice. And I've seen both in students and even in peers this sort of self-sabotage tendency, or maybe a better description might be a comparison problem. I really feel we need to get away from comparison, because we're all individuals, right? We're all unique creators, and comparing ourselves to our heroes is not really doing us any favors as far as developing our own personal language and our personal sound. If we're constantly sabotaging ourselves, saying we're not good enough, or not worthy to pursue our musical passion. So the don't is really don't self-sabotage, don't compare. I mean, there are many people who I've heard from who have said things like they go to hear one of their musical heroes and they leave depressed thinking, I'm never going to be able to do that. Well, that's one way to look at it, but the other might be, well, look at what they're pointing at as what's possible, right? They're pointing at a possibility, and not that you may not necessarily reach that same possibility, but they're opening doors that you as your own sovereign being has the same potential. So the don't is don't self-sabotage, don't compare. Well, what's the do? Well, the do is to be open, to not be tied to any given ideas, because we're on a path, and that path is going to change, and we're going to continue to grow and continue to develop. And as long as we're true to ourself, then that's a good path to be on. That is your true path. So I thought I'd tell a brief story that might be of some use for folks who might be struggling with this idea, especially young people, because I feel like I'm quite a late developer in many ways. And in my very early years, I really grew up playing rock. I didn't have any really musical family or anything like that. So I was just playing what was ever on the radio and started playing rock music, and used a lot of pedals, and of course just playing in cover bands and that kind of thing. And I was fortunate to get a really great teacher in my teens who gave me a really good foundation of a lot of concepts about learning the fingerboard, and introduced me to lots of different kinds of music, like progressive rock, and then to fusion, and then to jazz, um, and but I came up from this idea of playing like basically through a lot of pedals, and that was my sound in the rock world. Then I went to Berkeley, and my very first ensemble class was quite a defining moment in my life. And the short story is, I go to this class that says, as the prep is, don't bring anything except your guitar and a cable, no, nothing else. So I didn't bring anything else. I show up early. There's a group in the room that we're going to be in playing already, and I'm listening to them, and they're super happening. It was like a quintet or something, guitar, bass, drums, probably piano, two horns, something like that. And they're killing it, right? They're really smoking. And I thought, oh, this is going to be great. Now they finish, they walk out, we go in, and I'm looking like where I'm going to set up, and there's this little tiny solid state amp bolted to the wall on the floor. And I was like, oh my God, what is this thing? How am I going to get my sound out of that? So I plug into it, and of course, and I was using this guitar right here, and had no effects, not even any reverb. It just sounded terrible. And I couldn't get my sound, and I struggled that day, and I left all dejected. And I realized later, afterwards, the guy before me sounded great, right? He played through the same amp that I did. What's the difference? Well, the difference, the hard lesson was I was hiding behind these pedals, right? So I realized I couldn't really play, not really. So the next day I sold all my pedals and got on this pursuit of, of developing this language and really learning the music and being able to be proficient in a musical conversation. So that was my mission. But what happened as a result of that is I became a total jazz snob. Like, I got the ES 175. I played straight into Princeton Reverb, which I still have over here. Played straight into it for like 25 years. That's no effects, nothing. And that was my sound for a long time. And it wasn't until I was in my 40s where I realized, well, this is not being true to my roots, right? So now I get exposed back to the world of sound and manipulation of sound mostly through pedals and through other means. So now I fully embrace, whether it's the acoustic guitar, the electric guitar, straight into the amp, or plugged into all sorts of effects and all sorts of manipulations. It's music, right? So not being locked to any given path, like, oh, I have to be one of these or I have to be that, can really open our doors to our own expression and to finding our own voice. So hoping these are some words of inspiration for some that might be struggling with this kind of thing. And if this is a topic of discussion that you find at all useful, let me know, and I plan to make several videos that help to balance this left and right brain approach. So let me know what you think.